Hi class, today I'm going to be showing you how to move from Lightroom to Photoshop and how to edit in Photoshop. So go ahead and open up your Lightroom catalog and find an image that you would like to edit in Photoshop. You can go ahead and make some adjustments or you can make no adjustments at all. I went ahead and got this photo to where I wanted it to be, and I just did some basic adjustments in Lightroom. So what I did, if you've taken my digital photography 1 class, you can see that I added my lens corrections by removing chromatic aberration and enabling profile corrections. And then I checked my histogram, made sure that there was no clipping in the blacks or whites. I also set my white balance and then adjusted some of my tones here. So that's really the basic editing that I did. Anything like cloning, healing, masking, colors, etc., that can be added in Photoshop. And you can also, through this course, not necessarily this specific lesson, but through this course, you'll learn the differences between Lightroom and Photoshop. So also, if you've taken my class in the past, you would know that Lightroom, or just in general, any of the first uh, digital photography 1 classes that discuss Lightroom, um, you'll know that Lightroom is a non-destructive software. And it's non-destructive, just to summarize, because it saves all of your history. Everything that you do in Lightroom is editable again. Lightroom is super flexible. It's very user-friendly. When you close out of Lightroom, it will save all your information. You don't have to worry about um, the steps that you take in your photo because you can always go back and you don't have to worry about constantly saving your file. You don't have to worry about working in a non-destructive way because the program itself is non-destructive. But Photoshop, when we move into there, Photoshop is a destructive software, and I will show you exactly how and why that is and talk more about that once we get in there. So now that you've got your photo, hopefully you've got the edits that you want so far in Lightroom, or maybe you made no edits at all, which is fine. To go into Photoshop from Lightroom, you're going to right click and then select Edit In, and then go to Edit in Adobe Photoshop. So before I actually make that move, this might be a newer update for 2024, but in the past, when I have made updates, or sorry, when I have made adjustments to my photo in Lightroom before bringing it into Photoshop, there used to be a pop-up that would ask me if I wanted to edit or, edit or copy my Lightroom adjustments into Photoshop. And so there was like a little pop-up asking me if I wanted to edit it in Photoshop with Lightroom adjustments. And if it does pop up for you like that, you can go ahead and select that to then open it into Photoshop with the Lightroom adjustments that you made. If not, you can just go ahead and overall edit in Adobe Photoshop. And then again, like I said, there might be that pop-up. But so far for me, it has just been opening right up into Photoshop without any pop-up there. So now that we're in Photoshop, I want to go ahead and first change my view. So in Window at the top here, go ahead and go to your workspace. The workspace is defaulted as Essentials, and we want to be in Photography. So go ahead and choose Photography. And then now you can see I've got my histogram here as well. I've got my navigator to look into my photo and zoom in and out. And we've got all our adjustments here. Mostly everything is similar to the essentials, but the histogram part, along with, I'm sure, some other things. Let's see. Yes. In photography mode, you can see there's more of an extensive list here. So there's the history bar that you can see, actions, properties, all this information in this panel here. And we may not necessarily get into all of that in this course, but you'll definitely know the basics of Photoshop in this lesson, and then continuing in the course, you'll learn some more tools. So starting off, Right here in the layers, we can see the background layer. So this is your original image. And in general, Photoshop works in layers. And let's say if I were to add adjustments to this, like if I were to, for example, my first step in this process would be to clean up my image or to quote unquote retouch my image. So I would look for any areas in my image that I may want to remove. This image might not be honestly the best example because of the nature of the photo. I don't really think there's necessarily anything I really need to remove. But like, for example, if you had like a portrait of someone and if you wanted to like clean up their skin for any reason, that would be like a first step. And for this one, this image, I am going to clean up certain areas, but I'll just be kind of like random with it. And I can already see some areas that might be fun to remove. But for the cleanup process, like if you were to do a portrait or maybe, I don't think I can bring Lightroom back open, can I? Ooh, I can. Nice. Yeah, so maybe I'll try to find another image that might be a better example of what I may possibly remove. All right, so maybe in this image, if I were to clean this image up in Photoshop, I would want to get rid of these little leaves. Things like that, just to try to clean up the image a little bit. Very minimal things like that. Maybe in an image like this, I'd want to get rid of some rocks or something in the foreground to make it look a little bit, just a little bit more clean. Or here in this image, maybe I'd want to get rid of this little piece that's happening here, some of these things. So it's obviously really subjective to the image that you have, but I just wanted to further explain why you would remove certain things. Let me see, any other examples? Maybe in this image, I would get rid of these two trees in the background because they are taking away from my center image, for example, or my subject, rather. So just some examples of what I may get rid of. Or maybe I would get rid of like a little bit of this cloud over here. So yeah, those are some more examples of that. For this image, I'm probably just going to try to remove like this little Pepsi sign. Maybe I'll remove this right here. I might try to get rid of, um, maybe I'll try to remove this part here. So we'll see what we can do. So, like I was saying, if I were to go straight into and use the spot healing brush and just go straight into this image is then no longer um, non-destructive. I mean, it's already destructed basically. And I'm going to be showing you a non-destructive workflow. And a non-destructive workflow is by working in layers. And basically every step that you make is a new layer. So let's go ahead. I'm actually just going to, you don't necessarily have to copy this part, but I'm just going to make another background layer to be careful, or to be, I'm sorry, I'll make another background layer to be cautious. And I'm going to drag that to this little create new layer, like little square with a plus right down there. I'm going to drag it and it's going to copy itself. So now I've got a background copy. And this just makes sure you can do this in your own practice as well. This is the way that I was taught, just to have another backup of your copy. So it's like truly non-destructive, but up to you. So I did this for an example, just so that you can see when I destruct this photo, um, that that can happen. And so the first thing that I would do in this process, so don't do this, I'm just showing you how it can be destructive. But the first thing that I would do is I would go to this little band-aid here. And for you, maybe there's only one, but if you, yeah, I think all of mine are active, which may have happened because I've opened this up before. But if you only see one little band-aid, you can basically right click on that. And then it might have like a drop down with all the other options, but I can see all my other options here. Other options would be like patch tool, remove tool, healing brush, etc. So I'm just going to use this spot healing brush. And again, don't copy what I'm doing, but I'm just going to show you how this is destructive. So now I can go ahead and just remove. So I'm just using the brush to get rid of this little part, this pole that was sticking out. And then I'm also going to try to get rid of that Pepsi sign. And I'll talk a little bit more about what I'm doing in a second, but this is just for an example. All right, so I've removed a couple of things here and I did it not well, just as an example. And if I were to go ahead and then save this, so let's pretend that I don't actually have this. Let's pretend the background copy is the actual background, so that I don't have this main background here. And I've just added this spot healing brush on top and I've removed some things. If I were to save this file and then come back in and try to like get my edits back of what it looked like before with the Pepsi symbol in that poll up here, the information wouldn't be there anymore. And that's because if you do not know how to make Photoshop non-destructive, it will be a destructive program and is naturally a destructive program. So it doesn't like help you like Lightroom does, where it makes sure that every step you do is non-destructive. You don't have to worry about saving things or how you're saving things, or you don't have to worry about making things into different layers, because if you noticed in Lightroom, it made everything, you could consider these as layers. Each step is a new layer, so it's making it non-destructive. Whereas in Photoshop, we have to actually make the new layers. So I hope that's clear, but I'm gonna go ahead and just undo those things that I did. So actually, there is a little history bar here. So if you click this open, this is your history, and you can see all the history that I created. I'm just gonna go back to open. And again, I haven't saved this. So let's say I went ahead and I just saved this right now. When I bring it back into Photoshop to edit it again, this information would all be like, it would all be gone. I wouldn't be able to adjust this again. Like I had mentioned, getting that Pepsi sign back in, I wouldn't be able to do that. So once it's saved, you're pretty much just stuck with what you have, and that's why we work in more layers. So I'm going to go back to this open, and now I'm going to show you how to non-destructively edit. So as I had mentioned, up to you if you want to make a background copy, but I think it never hurts. So I'm going to drag this background to the new layer, and I've got a background copy to be extra cautious that this background that's locked is my original, and on top of that is going to be the file that I'm quote unquote editing on top of, which is I'm just stacking layers and more layers on top of it. So from there, my first step would be cleaning up. So I'm going to kind of repeat just what I did. I'll do it better, but also, and I'll walk you through the steps. And on top of that, I'll show you how it's non-destructive. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a new layer on top of the background copy, layer 1, and we are going to rename it. So how to rename layer 1? Like when you're first beginning in Photoshop, you might have like layer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to like 20. But we want to be more selective with what we're doing, and just really present on what every step that we're making. So go ahead and rename this. And I would like you to call this clean up. And the way that you can rename it is you can just go to rename layer. So I just right clicked on layer 1 and then clicked rename layer. And then I can type in clean up. You can also call this retouch, whatever you want to call it, but clean up works for me. So from there, you can see that layer one is activated because I've highlighted it. And now when I click on background copy, this means I'm editing the background copy when it's highlighted and it has a square around it. And now I see that I'm in cleanup mode here in my new layer. So always remember which layer you're on with by making sure you're clicked on the right one. Sometimes you can be clicked on this one or another layer and you're trying to do something and it's not working because you're not on the right layer. You can also turn on and turn off layers. So I could turn everything off and then turn everything back on. So that's how you can use a little eyeball to see before and after. And then from there, I'm going to use the spot healing brush. So right here, it is the Band-Aid with the little dots over it, little archway here. And then again, like I said, if you right click on it, like if you only see one Band-Aid, you might have a drop down with these other tools, but we're going to be using the spot healing brush tool. So the spot healing brush tool, the spot healing brush tool is amazing. Photoshop really just paved the way for everything that Lightroom is. All the tools that you can do in Lightroom, you can do in Photoshop. It's just that, like I said, Lightroom is non-destructive, and Photoshop, you have to be more careful about how you do things to make it non-destructive. Um, so we really have to pay our respects to Photoshop for being able to give us further technology with knowing how to remove things, etc. And like even just the apps that you have on your phone that can remove things super quick, that's all because of Photoshop. So the spot healing brush tool is really nice because you just paint with it and you remove things that way. Um, and just some more information. Right now we are on, or sorry, rather I should say at the top here, these are all the decisions that you can make and what you want in the brush. The spot healing brush tool, it already starts with this content aware. So that means it's going to be grabbing the information from around the subject that you're trying to remove and replacing it with that information. So as you saw when I removed this poll and when I remove it again, you'll see that it's pretty seamless in grabbing that black background. But when I was doing the Pepsi symbol, I was kind of a little bit heavy-handed with it and not being so careful. It wasn't able to grab that blue background as well. So you really have to think about brush size and also just the settings that you're using for your brush. But content aware is where you want to be. So let me try this out. I'm going to zoom in, and if you need to zoom in for any reason, you can do Command plus plus or Control plus plus if you're on a PC. Command is for Mac. And then same thing, you could do Command minus or Control minus to zoom out. So in the cleanup layer, I've got spot healing brush selected, and I'm gonna remove this. And great, it did exactly what I thought it was gonna do. It's not removing. I'm in my layer, and the actual brush is, I'm still painting. Hopefully you can see that I'm painting. Let me just try to pretend like I'm trying to get rid of this. Hopefully you can see that better. So I'm trying to get rid of the word Pacific, and it's not removing. Well, that's because Photoshop has all these hidden little secrets. So we actually have to check sample all layers for it to work. And now with sample all layers checked, now I can go ahead and remove this poll. And let's say I want to, I'm going to zoom in more. This brush size is okay. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. You could go back here to the brush size, and I didn't talk about this, but I'm going to talk about it now. So the size you can adjust here, how large or small it is, how soft or hard the brush is here as well. For cleaning up, I feel like you really want a very opaque brush. So I would have that at 100% because you want to be really clear about like what you're removing. Um, Whereas depending on the situation, like maybe with skin, if you're like retouching skin, your brush doesn't have to be as opaque. So it really depends. But in this situation, I'm going to have a really opaque brush. And then the mode, I'm just going to set as normal. So I want to increase my brush, but I actually don't want to do that here. I'm going to use the right and left bracket tools. Right bracket tool makes the brush larger. So I'm just clicking the right bracket tool. Left bracket tool makes it smaller. And if you're confused about what a bracket is, what is a bracket? I searched that earlier. Here are the brackets. So right bracket, left bracket. Right bracket makes the circle or the brush larger. Left bracket makes the brush smaller. All right, so now, like for example, if you did a brush size like this, that would work, but you kind of want to get more information around the subject, especially for this one. The background is all black, so I'm just going to get a little bit more information with a larger brush and then remove. And let me increase, oh, I'm just increasing my brightness, but I don't know if that shows on your end. So in the sky, it's pretty easy. It's doing a pretty good job. But now to remove it here, I'm just going to click and see how it does. So instead of like doing a full line, you know what? Maybe let me try that again. So to undo, you can do Command Z on a Mac or Control Z on a PC. So I'm just gonna go back a couple steps. And then let me try to do a line of just getting rid of this. I feel like it looked better before, so I'm gonna undo that. And I'm gonna actually work just a little bit smaller brush. And it's already working so much better. So I'm just like clicking, I might undo that part. Just clicking, and instead of dragging a whole line through, I'm just going to click certain areas. And I feel like that looks pretty good. If you didn't know that I removed it, I don't think you would know. And then this part here, I can kind of paint this in. This, maybe I'll just go like this and see if I can remove the pole. Yeah, no, it didn't do that great of a job. So I'm gonna undo that. Maybe I need to use a larger brush and just drag it across. And I feel like this looks better. So not perfect, but it's pretty good. I don't think you would know from far away. And then this like additional blue, I could also get rid of that just by coming in with a smaller brush and trying to make that blend a little bit more. I can also like use this to blend in these areas too. All right, so from far away, doesn't look too bad. So this is before, after, before, after. I'm just using that the eyeball on the side to show you before and after. So pretty good. And then over here, that Pepsi symbol, I'm gonna also try to get rid of this. I'm gonna use a smaller brush like it is right now, maybe just a little bit bigger. And I'm gonna make like a solid circle and just kind of go into it little by little. So when you're using any brush tool, like any shape that you're making is going to reflect on that part of the image. So if I were to like make a bunch of random strokes here, that's going to affect the image. It's actually not too bad, but I just wanted to show that like it is important about what kind of shapes you're making and you want to be consistent with it. I usually do these like circular full circles here that are fully opaque. I try not to leave any gaps in between. And then here, yeah, eventually you'll just kind of get like a flow with it, but I'm just kind of making lines and then going in with a couple dots. So now you can see that it's copying from these chords above and creating this kind of pattern. Um, so I'm gonna actually make a bigger brush and then just like tap it. And it removed it there. Now it's starting to remove it here, which is good. So it's kind of like a big play of going back and forth and just trying different things. Hmm. And then I know that we removed this part over there, but maybe we can kind of get rid of this a little bit more as well. So as you can see, my brush strokes are just a lot more solid. And as you notice, like as you saw before with the chords, like it will rebuild. And you're seeing it now too, as I'm trying to get rid of things because it is using content aware. So it's trying to grab the nearest object to fill in that space. Okay. All right, so let's see before and after. Before, after. Not too bad. I am working pretty quick just because I don't want to take too much time of me just editing this one part. But so you get the overall idea. The shape of the person is not great, so I wonder if we can improve that. You know what? I think we could use another tool for that. So I'm gonna come back to this and improve this area with a different tool later. But I did kind of correct the shape by following the shape a little bit. All right, so that is the before and after of just a quick cleanup. And you can do that anywhere in your photo. So you just kind of want to think of areas that you'd want to get rid of. Again, like I said, this isn't maybe the best example for a traditional cleanup because there is so much going on, and that's kind of the idea of the photo. But any sort of like imperfections you see that you think don't want to be there, or maybe you don't even need a cleanup layer, that's really up to you. But I just wanted you to get comfortable with using the spot healing brush. So that's a spot healing brush. Remember that if you want to use this, you'll have to sample all layers. And then from there, we can go ahead and make some general adjustments. So under the single adjustments, there are a lot of ways that you can brighten your photo, and those can be found in four different ways. There's brightness and contrast, curves, levels, and exposure. So I'll go ahead and start with brightness and contrast. I think you can achieve the same look with all of these. So choose one or choose maybe two of them to use, but really I think you can accomplish it with one. So I'll just show you the differences. For brightness and contrast, this will create a new layer. So this is Lightroom, or I'm sorry, this is Photoshop helping you make non-destructive decisions because it's not putting the brightness layer right on that background copy. It's now beginning to start making its own layers. So to make this image a little bit brighter, I could just increase that or decrease this. It's pretty similar to Lightroom. Same thing, contrast, very similar to the tones in Lightroom. That's one way. There we go. That's where I wanted to be. Sorry. Yes, if you want to go back into here, as you could see, I kind of closed that down with the arrows. But you can bring it back with this tab here, the properties. And you want to make sure you're clicking on this. This is a layer, another layer, and we'll get into that in another video. But right here, you just want to select the main shape. So like for curves, you would select this one. So all of these adjustments will come with a layer attached, a blank layer. So from that, or rather, this is, it is a layer, but this is also more so a mask, as it says here, layer mask. And that's, again, going to be another video. But I just wanted to clarify, it's not the same as this layer right here. So it comes with a layer mask, rather. And then I can go ahead and show you curves. So brightness and contrast, hopefully you saw that it's pretty simple. Curves, this is working on an X and Y axis. And what I can do, I'm going to turn off brightness and contrast so you can see the difference. I can click in between the X and Y axis right in the middle. And then I'm going to use my up arrow on my keyboard and just bring it up. And that's really it for the brightness adjustment. You can also make it darker by going down. And I'm just like, instead of using my cursor to like drag it down or drag it up, because you can start to like, for example, let me just show you, you can get really wobbly with this. And that's just something else to play with in general. But for this brightness and darkness, you can just put it on that XY axis and then go ahead and bring it down or bring it up. And then I can close it down by hitting these arrows, and then I can go back into my curves by double clicking the curves, and then I'm back in it. So another way to play with your brightness and darkness is levels. I'm going to turn off curves, and as you can see, levels is showing your histogram. All right, so the histogram here, it's working, as I have said before, or you learned in past classes, clipping will occur when it's at 0, which is pure black, or 255, which is pure white, as you can see here. So we can kind of adjust that and bring these in. And this is making the image brighter, and then bringing in the blacks is making the image darker. And then you have your midtones right in the middle here. So I personally prefer levels. I've always been a big fan. I'm just gonna actually reset this. You can click the little reset button here, and now you can start over. So I'm gonna do that again. So I'll bring in my whites a little bit to make it brighter. Bring in my darks a little bit, just a tiny bit. And then my mids. I feel like it was okay how it was before. So before, after, just a little bit of enhancement. And honestly, maybe a little bit too much. But just as an example, that's how you use levels. And I very much prefer using levels just because it's pretty fun. It just like makes more sense in my brain. It also like I feel like makes me think a little bit more than rather than just like using the brightness tool. I like to think of it as like using the histogram. And then you can also fully lighten up your whole image. This is like more so exposure overall. So lightening up the exposure, dulling it out rather, or um, darkening the image. So yeah, lightening the image, but it like honestly looks kind of dull as well, and then darkening the image. All right, and then the last tool here is exposure. So I'm gonna turn my levels off, and then you can basically just add exposure or decrease exposure. So also works very similarly. And those are the 4 ways that you can brighten and darken your image. So I'm actually gonna get rid of, I think I'm just gonna keep the levels. So what I can do is I can take and drag this brightness and contrast layer into the trash. There's a little trash can there. So you can just drag it to the trash. All right, so now we've got my levels. And then from there, I had mentioned that I wanted to do this part better. So I have an idea. And we're gonna make another new layer. And for this layer, I'm going to do some cloning. So again, right click to rename. And honestly, with cloning, you could be very specific. So you could make a new layer for every clone you do. Same thing with retouching as well. If you had certain areas of your photo that you wanted to clean up, maybe you are doing a portrait of someone, or maybe let's say you're doing like a product photo shoot and you are photographing like a purse and some shoes next to each other. You could have one layer for shoes cleanup and one layer for purse cleanup. So you could separate those, and that's even more non-destructive if you separate them out. For this one, I'm gonna go ahead and just do one, well, let's call this Pepsi clone. All right. And then I can use my clone stamp tool, which is right here. Clone stamp works by selecting an area and then copying from that area that you select. So I'm going to zoom in real close here. And the kind of shape that we want to achieve is before we did all these edits. So I'm just going to drag this off, drag this back on. I'm just clicking and dragging on the eyeballs there and then dragging it back up. All right, so I can see that I need to make a significant cut here, and I'm gonna try to emulate that. I can see the pattern right here. So this is all extra buildup that I wanna get rid of. So I can clone it out. And like I said, with cloning, you select an area, and I think my brush is, yeah, my brush is really large, so I couldn't even see it. So I'm actually going to use this size just to get me to where I need to be. And then for clone, I think I'm also going to use, let's do like 50% for my brush and just see how that goes. All right, so now I can set my target area. And like, let's say if I want to like try to clone right now, I just try to use my brush. It said could not use the clone stamp because the area of the clone has not been defined. Option click to define a source point. So for Mac, that's Option. For PC, that's Alt. So now when I click Option, you can see that it becomes a little target and it's trying to find a source. So I'm going to select up here and then Option click. And now I've set my source. So hopefully you can see it. So I'm copying from up here, but I'm bringing it down here. And then from there, I'm going to bring it in and kind of create that shape. And you can see, obviously you can see the difference here. So then I might clone from here and bring this in. And you know what? Maybe I will make a softer brush. And I'm gonna bring that in a little bit. The trick for me with cloning is just kind of being like really random with it. Obviously in the same area, but you can see that I'm selecting different points as I'm trying to bring this in. So I'll just select from above and see how everything looks. And then I'm gonna continue to try to make that shape. So I'll source from here and then cut this out. And then if I go all the way over here, it's going to start cloning this area. So just be careful of where you're grabbing from. This area is kind of hard to get to. So like if I keep going forward, oh, it's not too bad actually. But I'm getting really close to that pole and you see that I'm starting to make that pole there, right? So I'm going to undo Command Z, Command Z. And I'm going to select again. So Option or Alt, click, and I'm going to start bringing this in. All right, let's see, before and after. Obviously there's a different shape here, but I don't think you'd be able to tell if you didn't know it was there. And then, yeah, I feel like the texture looks pretty okay. Um, there is like a little bit of divide here, so. All right, so that is how you clone out things. And you can also, mostly I use cloning for healing that area, the hair. And maybe I can actually copy something now. So let me make a new layer and I'm gonna call this, you could also just have one layer that's called clone and you can do everything on top of that, but let me just call this, maybe like clone person. All right, so now I'm gonna clone this person and I'm gonna put them Maybe I'll put them over here. I'll try to do that. So I'm gonna grab a larger brush by using my right bracket key, and I just held it down to make it really big, really fast. And then I'm just going to hit Option and select. And then from there, I'm going to place him maybe here. So then I'm just brushing in like so. And because my image is so blurred, like you see this person here, there's a lot of like light trails happening. I can probably make this work without it being too obvious. Oops. So I'm gonna zoom in, and then I just want to get rid of all that information around the person. So I'm actually gonna hit my erase tool, and this brush is really large, so I'm gonna make it small. And so just to show you, I'm gonna turn everything off, and this is what the clone looks like. So I can, when I erase and I use my erase tool, I'm using my erase tool non-destructively. The erase tool can be destructive if you use it in the wrong way. But I'm gonna go ahead and erase around this person just so you can see. So that's what it looks like on a blank layer. And already I know I want this person gone. You don't have to do it this way. I just wanted to show you what that looks like when you have a layer alone. So I'm gonna turn everything back on. And then now you can see how I'm bringing the photo back in with the erase tool. So this person is going to just be disappearing into the background. I wonder if we can put something else here to kind of make them fade in a little bit more. Because now they're really standing out, which is pretty funny. You know what? Maybe I could clone this and put it on top of there. So I'm going to, again, go back to my clone tool. The soft brush is really working for me because it's not so harsh. So I would recommend the soft brush. And maybe we just like fully replace this whole thing. So you can't even really see it and it starts over here and then kind of continues into itself. So I'm gonna go like this. And I think I went too far, but let's try that again. Okay, that looks pretty good. Maybe I could just erase this little part so that it looks like it blends in a little bit more. And I'm trying to bring those in a little bit more. All right. So now I have two of the same person in my image, and I tried to hide them over here with that flare that was happening. And the next thing that I'm going to show you is the paint tool. So we went over so far the cleanup by using the spot healing brush tool. We learned the different ways to lighten and darken your photo with levels. There's also brightness and contrast, curves, and exposure to play with. Um, Then we've also learned clone stamp, which there's two different ways to do that. We learned about layers. And the next thing I'm going to show you is also to make a new layer, and we are going to paint. So I'm going to call this the paint layer. And what I'm going to do is, I mean, you can definitely have fun with this. I'm going to grab the brush tool right over here. And, you know, I think I want a pretty opaque brush. The size is too large. You can also choose like different soft brushes here. So let me actually make the brush softer. And I'm going to make it larger with my bright bracket tool. And we're still on clone, so I'm going to go back to brush, make my brush larger. Now it's a lot softer here, and I want to choose my color. So here, the color that you're using is going to be the top one. So it will favor which one's on top here. So if we see, oh, I'll explain that in a second, why it's not working. But I'm going to choose this bright pink. And you can change colors by, using this. You can drag this little circle to kind of mix and choose which color you want, but I'm going to do this bright pink. And then from there, I'm on the paint layer, but as you can see, nothing was happening when I was selecting, and I'm still in clone. Oh no. Either way, it wasn't working, because if I turn all this off, still nothing is there, so there was nothing cloned either way. So in my brush tool, oh, maybe that was just why it wasn't working. Sorry. Yeah, so it was on the clone. I thought there was another thing that I needed to select, but actually, let me just go back to clone for 1 second. So if clone is not working, I just wanted to show you, there is these options to do current layer, current and below, or all layers. In order for it to work, for you to see it, if it's not working, you can do current and below, because basically it's saying everything on this current layer and below it is what I want to clone from. If you do all layers and you have like layers on top and then you're just editing this paint layer and cloning there, then that would also select the upper layers as well. So for cloning, if you ever run into the fact that you're not able to clone anything and it's not working, it's not showing up, that means you need to be in current and below. So that's another trick in Photoshop where you have to be specific about which layer you're working on. But since we're painting, that's why it is working, which is great. I'm going to go back with a soft brush, and that's because I want like frayed edges, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint, maybe a bigger brush. So I know we're covering everything up, but I just kind of want to create this like interesting effect. Maybe I'll be a little bit more, take a new smaller brush and do something kind of fun like this. All right, beautiful. And that's it. No, just kidding. We are gonna go ahead and change this a little bit. But yeah, if I just painted like this, then there is no image left. So it's a definite art decision, but I do want to bring this information back. So now that I've laid on a opaque paint, um, then I'm gonna go ahead and go to opacity right here. And I'm gonna bring this down, and then we can see my image again. So I just want to get it to the point where it's like just showing up like this. And I think I went a little bit too heavy-handed with the paint, so I'm gonna redo this. And let's just go back a couple steps instead. All right, so now in my brush tool, let me try that again. All right, let's see how this looks if I bring the opacity down. Try that one more time. I did this before and I really liked the way it looked. Okay, try this one more time. Maybe I'll just keep it like in this area. Yeah, that might be kind of cool. Okay, and then take my opacity down. And then on top of that, you can add to it. So now that you've kind of reduced the opacity, I can go ahead and add some more shapes in here. And I'm gonna actually rename this and call this pink paint, and then make a new one, a new layer, and I want to add some orange. All right, so I'm gonna find an orange color. Also notice when I click the, like if I change these different colors by clicking these arrows, the black will not erase. It looks like it's erasing, but it's not. Um, it will be the color that it's choosing. So know that the top color is always the one that you're grabbing from. So I'm gonna change this one to orange. Ooh, like that looks really nice. And then I'm gonna add on top. Trying to decide what I like. All right, so I undid that, but I still want to paint with it. I just was trying to figure out what shape I wanted. So yeah, let's try that again. Maybe just a big brush. And all right, so let's say that's my image. I was just trying to create like some kind of like film type look, a cool effect. But yeah, it's maybe not exactly where I wanted, but there's a couple paint layers there. And I just wanted to show you, like, you definitely don't have to use effects like paint, but I wanted to get you comfortable with using the brush specifically because we'll be applying the brush in different ways and further when we're using Photoshop. So yeah, definitely have fun with it. And once you're ready to save this, we're gonna actually bring it back into Lightroom. So now I can go ahead and just exit out, so I don't even have to hit file save. You probably should though, like as you're going in general, just like I said, like Photoshop is destructive. So if I didn't save anything in here and let's say the program just froze, hopefully and usually it will be able to open with your past edits, but we don't want to rely on that. So you should always be saving, or you can do Command S as you're working through it, and it's going to be saving back into Lightroom. So as I was doing that, I should have definitely been saving as I was going. But as you saw, like I didn't make any big adjustments that I couldn't redo. But if you're doing like a lot of heavier masking and things like that that we'll learn further in this class, you definitely want to save in between. In general, you should save in between. But because I've done so little, like I'm not too worried about having to redo it and start over. Um, but definitely good rule of thumb, save in between. And then now I'm just going to save it by just hitting the X button, the red button here. Again, if you want to be super cautious, just go File Save or Command S or Control S on your computer. And then I'm going to exit out. And here now it's asking, oh, you're exiting out. Do you want to save it? And I would say, yes, save. And then this is going to save back into Lightroom. Oh no, I've got my little rainbow. Let's see, did it save? It did, nice. I got a little scared because my Lightroom, I think I had opened it and closed it, and usually you should see it go straight in from Photoshop to Lightroom, but it was closed. So it is there, and you can see it's now in Lightroom. It's saved as a TIFF. Um, That's also one of the settings I set. Like you might see it come in as a PSD file, like a Photoshop file. But basically, now you can see this is the original in Lightroom, and then it's made a copy because it says one of two. I can see that this is my edit from Photoshop, and it even says edit to.tiff. So if I want to open this back up in Photoshop and re-edit on top of it, I can right click and go edit in Adobe Photoshop. Then it's going to pop up with a question. Do I want to edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, edit a copy, or edit original? So if I go to edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments, let's just see what happens. So it comes in as the photo, but notice all of my layers are gone. This will also happen when you open it just as a copy. So this is the scary thing about Lightroom. This is not the last choice that you should choose because there is a way to get your layers back, and I'll show you that in a second. But yeah, this is how Photoshop can be destructive because now I can't even get back to my original file and I can't see all of the edits I made. I can't undo these edits. I can't erase anything of these edits. So this is the destructive part of Photoshop. So I'm going to exit out. I'm not going to save it. So the way you should do it is you should right click, go to edit in Adobe Photoshop, and then you want to select edit original. So now when I go to edit original, all of my layers are here. So they're back again. So make sure if you want to come back into Photoshop and edit your file again to select edit original.